Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Between the Ears. I'm Schuyler Callihan. Make sure you hit that subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI and give us a follow on X at SI_WVU. It is time to dive into some Arizona Wildcats. A little look at the matchup here today. This will be a little bit more of a condensed episode, obviously, with me going solo today, but we'll give some keys to the game a little bit into this matchup with Arizona, and then tomorrow we will have the walkthrough game day show with Eugene, Napoleon, really diving into the weeds for this thing and giving our picks at the end of that episode as well. So let's do this. Let's start with Arizona's offense and that vaunted West Virginia defense, baby. Interestingly enough, Jordan Leslie talked about it earlier this week in his press conference on Monday, and I actually just wrote an article on it. So it's up on the website if you want to check it out. If you don't believe what I'm about to say, the quote will be there for you. But essentially said that there was way more good than bad in that loss to Kansas State. And maybe if you split the game up into the two halves, maybe. But when you put the whole thing into totality, not the case whatsoever. That first half against Kansas State, they did a really good job of kind of just keeping the ball in front of them outside of the one big explosive play that they had in the passing game. They did tremendous against DJ Giddens in that running game and really kind of limited them running the football. Giddens only averaged 3 yards on the nose per carry. So if you would have told me or the West Virginia staff that heading into that game, you probably felt pretty good about your chances of winning. Unfortunately, Kansas State dinked and dunked all night long and had a couple of explosive plays, but just kind of felt like a slow bleeding death there in the early parts of the second half, and then it just kind of got away from them. But this Arizona offense, maybe not numbers wise, but they are a potent team. They can put up numbers. They can they can move the football just as good as anybody when they are clicking on all cylinders. It has not really happened for them yet this season. And they haven't been probably as balanced as they would like to be. Quali Conley, their leading rusher, 500 yards on the season, 6 touchdowns. So when they do run the football, they can run it well and effective. They just don't run it nearly enough. And that probably is a good thing for them in this matchup because West Virginia has done a pretty good job against the run for the most part, outside of really the Kansas game. That was probably the outlier to this point, and I guess you could go back to even the season opener against Penn State. But they've done a pretty decent job defending the run. Against the pass, however, that's been the Achilles heel. Quarterbacks have just salivated at the opportunity to get against this West Virginia defense. And I'm sure Noah Fafita is doing the same thing. He is probably looking at this as, well, damn, this is a get right game for me because I haven't been right all season. I've been up and I've been down, and the interceptions have been a problem. This is a defense that hasn't forced many turnovers. This feels like a safe game for him. So, look at Fafita, 70% plus percent completion percentage last year. He's only at 59.1% this year. Definitely a big decrease there, a major increase in interceptions, as we already noted. I think he had two all of last year, maybe three. Already at 10 this year, which is a staggering number for somebody who is kind of considered a dark horse Heisman Trophy candidate, somebody that was a dark horse to win the Big 12 Player of the Year, along with his teammate Ted McMillan at wide receiver. So as for Fafita, he's not somebody that's going to beat you with his legs. He can use his legs to extend plays. He can evade pressure, but again, he's not going to necessarily dice you up with his legs. In some ways, he's kind of like Nico Marchiol. That's probably a decent comparison in terms of his mobility. He's athletic enough to be able to evade pressure when needed, but they're not going to be calling a bunch of run design plays or quarterback run design plays for him. So that's the skinny on him. Now, Ted McMillan, we could have an hour long conversation about him. We're going to really kind of shrink this down and just put it as he's really damn good. And I don't know what West Virginia's plan is going into this to defend him. He's going to beat you in all three levels. And he is just one of those players where going into it, you know he's going to have a day. He's going to put up his numbers. He's going to have his yards, his catches. He's probably going to score a touchdown. You just can't let him beat you all day long. That is the number one thing. And if he goes for 200, well, you're probably going to lose the game, because that's just kind of the nature of Arizona's offense. He's the guy that they lean on in the passing game, and they really don't have another option. They have a couple of other guys. The tight end Burnett is somebody they like to get the ball to a little bit. They like to throw it out to Conley out of the backfield. He's their second leading receiver in terms of receptions. So that kind of shows you kind of the variation and kind of where they kind of like to spread the football. If it's not McMillan, it's probably going to be a check down option, either the tight end or the running back out of the backfield. And if McMillan has his way, it's going to be a long day. So McMillan, number one priority there. Again, you can't go man to man coverage on him. West Virginia doesn't have the personnel to do that, and they don't really have the safety play to help over the top consistently enough, especially Aubrey Burks being out. That's going to be a massive loss. Don't know Aiden Garnes' status at this point in time. He's questionable for the game. So this is kind of a beaten up secondary already. And now you're going to have to go up against, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in college football. So keys to the game for the defense. I mean, I would say probably load up on the pressure on the left side of the offensive line. Rhino, I'm not going to pronounce his last name, very long, very hard. So I'm going to keep it to Rhino, his first name. He has been ruled out for the remainder of the season. That's a big loss for them. An offensive line that's been up and down. So I feel like for West Virginia, the way to get Fafita rattled is to just dominate the line of scrimmage, get pressure up in his face, and you don't really need to bring the house all that often. West Virginia's had a lot of success with 4 and 5 man pressures all season long, has even had some success with 3 man pressures. So I feel like they're going to be able to do that while keeping guys back in pass coverage against this offensive line, against a left tackle that's going to be kind of drinking out of a fire hose this week. So if they can get home to Fafita and force him to flush out of the outside of the pocket, I like West Virginia's chances defensively to at least limit the big explosive plays that they've been giving up all season long. Because McMillan's their really only target they get the football to, at least in terms of a receiver. So, number one, apply pressure. And number two, I would say, is take advantage of the turnovers when they're there. We could talk about turnovers every single game, but this is a game where it is 100% going to be critical. This has been a turnover prone quarterback this season, and he's going to throw some turnover worthy passes to you. You can't let him drop right between the breadbasket. You just can't. You've had the pick six go through your hands at Pitt. You've had another pick six happen. Maybe it may have been Oklahoma State. Maybe it was Kansas. I can't remember. But there was another pick six opportunity that they let go. You can't have those happen, especially, and we'll get to it, if you have a young quarterback starting for you. You need those extra opportunities. So let's flip it over to the other side, West Virginia offense and Arizona's defense. The big key going into this one, or I guess the big question mark going into this one, of course, is the status of starting quarterback Garrett Green. Upper body injury, they won't diagnose or say what it is. Is it a head? Is it a shoulder? Is it a chest? I don't know. We don't know. They're not going to say. And Neil Brown has been very adamant about that and other guys' injuries. If no one else is going to say anything about their injuries, Neil Brown's not going to either. And you can disagree with a lot of what Neil Brown has to say. I know I have, but I'm with him on that. If no one has to release an injury report, why should you? Why help out the other team? It sucks for us covering the team because it's hard to kind of give you the right coverage and kind of game plan how West Virginia might game plan this thing, and how we have to talk about it and write about it. And it sucks for you, the fans, too, to know kind of what to expect. But from an advantage standpoint, it does nothing for West Virginia to reveal what's going on. So don't be alarmed. Don't be surprised if Neil Brown doesn't say anything of substantial um, notice on Thursday at his radio show at Kegler's. So more than likely, it'll be kind of the same thing. Yeah, he's practiced, but we're not going to say what's going on. So let's talk about the game plan if Garrett plays. We'll split this up. We'll get to Nico here in a minute. If Garrett does play, I get the feeling that this is probably leaning more towards Nico getting the start, but we'll get Garrett out of the way here first. If Garrett does play, I don't think you're going to see a single designed run for him. It is going to be drop back and pass. There will be RPO elements, absolutely, because this is an RPO heavy offense. It's either going to be handing it off or throwing it. It's not going to have that third option of him running the football. But there will be times where he's going to have to run out of the pocket and call his own number, whether that's guys aren't getting open. We'll talk about that here in a second. Whether it's the protection up front, not holding up, he's going to have some. There's going to be plays where he's going to have to use his legs. It's not ideal, but he can't just sit there in the pocket and take a big hit. So you have to protect him as much as you can. He's going to run into some hits on his own. You don't need to add on to that hit number by having him, have 3 or 4 Q draws, have some read options in there. You got to eliminate all of that. This has got to be an offensive game plan where you lean on CJ Donaldson, you lean on Jaheim White, getting you going in the running game, and you just hope that your receivers and your tight ends find open spaces in that zone defense that Arizona is going to play at times, and you just pick them apart that way. You can't play it the way you did last week against Kansas State, where it was Garrett dropping back, nothing there in a second and a half, and he's taken off. That ran him into the ground, as we saw. So twisting this now into what happens if Nico plays, because this is probably what will happen. I'm not saying that I have any information right now that leads to me saying that. My gut is telling me this is probably going to be a Nico game, especially when you have the bye week coming up. It's another week for Garrett to rest and get back into the swing of things. So you're almost talking 2.5 weeks for him to kind of get back from whatever it is that he's dealing with, and you go down the stretch with Garrett. So for Nico, I understand that the play calls can be more complex, or they can have more options available to them this year with Nico than say they did last year against Texas Tech or last year in his relief efforts against Pitt. But you still kind of want to keep it very simple. You don't want to get this too overloaded for him. You don't want him kind of, using the term I said earlier for Arizona's left tackle, you don't want him drinking out of a fire hose, even though it's not his first start. It's his first start this season, if this is the case. And with it being a place that he's familiar with, he played some high school ball out in Arizona. I know it's not necessarily a homecoming for him, but in a way it is. This is a big time game for him, a opportunity for him to show that he is the guy moving forward. And perhaps if he plays well enough, maybe this sparks some quarterback controversy moving on past the bye week. Maybe it doesn't, but still, for Nico, he's going to want to do the very best he can and have the best game possible. You don't need to add on to that pressure. He's going to already put enough on himself. So starting with the run game. And this is going to be very, very key, obviously, regardless of who's under center for West Virginia. But Jaheim White and CJ Donaldson. Last week against Kansas State, they averaged 2.7 yards per carry. Jaheim didn't play in the second half, but CJ got a ton of work there and just didn't really get going. Against Oklahoma State, they ran whatever they wanted to. Iowa State, it was a struggle. Kansas State, it was a struggle. This duo is due for a big game, and they need a big game from this duo. They don't need both guys to rush for 100. Would that be great? Absolutely. But if you can get a $150 between those two, one goes for 80, one goes for 70, vice versa, however you want to split it up, that will open so much up for Nico in the passing game. You want to establish the run early, and I don't think that there's going to be this weird plan where Neil's going to come out knowing he's got a guy making his first start in a while, and just going to start chucking the ball down the field right out of the chute. That's not going to happen, especially when you have receivers that have really struggled to win their man on man situations. Arizona's going to mix it up. They'll play some man, they'll play some zone, but even when they're in zone, this receiving core has still got a lot of growth to make before they can become someone that you can really rely on. So in the meantime, you rely on the two guys that helped get you to this point and helped you last year when you made that run down the stretch. So got to get Jaheim back going. You got to get CJ going. And I'm the firm believer. And I would throw CJ out there first. Gene and I talked about this on the game day show. Maybe it was going into the Iowa State game. But if they kind of flip their roles in some way, they're both getting a lot of work. They're both kind of splitting carries. But CJ was the guy last year, right? He came in, he set the tone, and really allowed for Jaheim to come in and kind of play off of that. This year, it's kind of been a little bit of an opposite situation where Jaheim's kind of going in first. He's setting the tone ish, and CJ kind of mixes in, and then they just kind of go back and forth after that. I'm of the belief that they need to go back to what that plan was a year ago. CJ is a big physical bruising back that's really going to lean on that front seven and make it a hell of a time for those guys up front. If he bangs around in between the tackles, those guys are going to be having hands on hips. They're going to be gasping for air by the time the middle of the second quarter runs around. Jaheim can then take advantage of that by using his speed, his shiftiness, his elusiveness, his slipperiness, and spring some of those big explosive runs. I feel like you got to give them the heavy hitter first and then give them the quick little agile back to follow. Doing it the other way around just doesn't seem like it makes a whole lot of sense. I don't want guys running all over the place in the beginning. I want guys to be tired. And tired is going to be more from the physical aspect of it than running from sideline to sideline or one hash to the other trying to defend Jaheim. These guys are well conditioned. At this point in the season, it's not going to be a surprise. The physicality, especially at this point in the year, when you're getting into late October, guys are beaten up. They don't really want to start having to deal with CJ time and time again, a 240 plus pound running back, just hammering it down in between the tackles time and time again in that first half. There are going to be some business decisions that are being made. So have CJ be that bell cow at first, Jaheim slip in right out from under or right from behind him and do his thing. The receivers we talked about. It has been a big issue, and I don't know that they're going to really be able to fix it this year. Traylon Ray's had some flashes. Hudson Clement has had his games for sure. He's the number one receiver at this point. But as I said yesterday, where the hell is Justin Robinson? This is a 6'4", 215, 220-pound receiver that has played several years in college football, has played in the SEC, has made plays here at West Virginia, but hasn't got the ball, hasn't been targeted nearly enough, hasn't been on the field nearly enough. And you could say the same about Jaden Bray when he is healthy. Why is Justin Robinson not a bigger part of this offense? That is a red flag to me. And that's not on Justin Robinson. That's on the coaching staff for not getting him into the game and getting him touches. That's got to change. He didn't come here to catch 10 passes all season. He has got to be a guy moving down the stretch for you. The other part of this, the other big question mark heading into this game, left tackle. Wyatt Milam, questionable. Again, upper body injury. Don't know what the details are there, but that's an All-American. That's a potential first-round pick that you're going to have to replace. Johnny Williams has played well in his spot time, but this would be his first real wide-open, extended playing time, his first start where he knows going into it, this is my game. How does he perform? How does Arizona attack that side of the offensive line? especially if Nico starts and that's the guy coming to his side, not his blind side, but his front side. So that'll be an interesting battle to watch. If West Virginia doesn't have Wyatt Milam, it's going to be really interesting, especially if Nico starts. If Garrett starts, at least you have an experienced quarterback. Yes, it would be his blind side, but you have an experienced quarterback that knows how to move and get out of the pocket and stay away from that pressure. Nico, he's been stepping into sacks throughout his career. Showed it again last week against Kansas State. So that's a big concern for me. So that's an area that I'm going to be watching from snap one till the end of the game. If Johnny Williams is in there, if it's Wyatt Milam, then it's just normal as usual. So really, for me, I think the biggest key for West Virginia in this game offensively, regardless of who is a quarterback, is you have got to get that duo going. Jaheim White, CJ Donaldson, get them a $150, help that quarterback out, whoever it is, and set yourself up for success. You can't live in third and longs. So many 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s. You stay behind the chains, you live behind the chains. You got to get yourself in third and manageable situations. That way you can keep that defense off the field too. So that's going to do it for me here today on Between the Ears. I'm Schuyler Callihan. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI. Give us a follow at SI_WVU on X. And I will be back tomorrow to preview West Virginia and Arizona on the Walkthrough Game Day show with West Virginia legendary running back Eugene Napoleon. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow on Game Day.